This is an attempt to hold classes through a podcast. I hope you will listen and be transported to your class in college and prepare for your exam accordingly. I will more or less follow the method I use in college, focus on the text, and you can revert back with questions, doubts, etc. Is that okay? The essay that we are about to do is Student Mobs by J.B. Priestley, who was a writer after having done a stint in the First World War as part of the infantry. He talks about student mobs, which are huge crowds of students gathered together, causing disturbance and disruption, revolting against some law or rule or policy of the government, college, or anybody in authority as expression of their democratic right. He says that when he went to Cambridge after this stint in the First World War, he was obviously not a naive, young, inexperienced scholar ready to take on the world with dreams and idealism. He begins his essay by apologizing about the prejudice against students. Prejudice is a strong, sometimes irrational opinion, like a bias, without any reason. He calls himself fair, hence the need to apologize for a flaw or a drawback in him. He doesn't like students. He doesn't dislike students. But the fact that when he went to university, he was a 26-year-old man and a battered soldier, which means he had seen the roughness of war, killings, deaths, and was without illusions about the realities of life. Had he been to college as a youngster, full of dreams and hopes and rose-colored spectacles, he probably would have been more forgiving of students and more inclined to be kind about their so-called antics. He could not understand a youngster who was excited about his first bank account and a checkbook because Priestley had seen it all and much more by the time he entered college. He does not understand as to why young men in universities who become loud and rebellious, very emphatic about their demands, should not be punished and treated more harshly than they are. They are treated indulgently, which means they are forgiven too easily, they are humored, they are let off without sufficient punishment. Priestley wonders why they should be treated better than, say, for example, mechanics, transporters, garage attendants, trainees who do low category menial jobs. He feels they deserve to be treated more harshly because they are students. They are a privileged class who are receiving an education at the cost of maybe the peasants of a country. Scholarships, stipends, fundings are made out of the taxpayers' money, out of somebody's hard work, and somewhere someone is having to stay hungry because of the education that is being provided to these students. These students need to behave more responsibly, considering the sacrifice that goes into their making, and not burn books, rather read them. He particularly dislikes the appearance of those student mobs which make their appearance on television screens, marching along, raising slogans, smashing cars, burning furniture, frightening women and children. They look idiotic with their idiotic grins, as if they are on some world-saving mission. Priestley says they are definitely not the work of student minds. These are students manipulated by the governments and politicians on a rent-a-mob basis, which means they are hired or paid by governments to wreak havoc, cause destruction in the name of freedom and equal rights. According to the writer, we live in a strange world. On the one side, there are world organizations and bodies which aim at the welfare of mankind, like the United Nations, the Oxfam, or the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief, etc., devoted to medical care, education. In the context of such well-meaning organizations, it is difficult to imagine the destruction taking place on another level. The moment there is a difference of opinion on policies, there is an immediate attack on government property or on those structures which represent the establishment, the embassies, the consulates, the information bureau, I'm sure you will all relate to this because even now in our own country we have illustrations of this, which again goes to prove how little has changed in the name of politics, power, and strength. There is this huge crowd which gathers, probably rented by the side which wishes to see the governing body down and out, howling, shouting, destroying, burning, and doing everything that goes against the rules of correct behavior. And the fact that this may not be the work of young, hot headed students or even the opposition of the government, but manipulation of the government itself as a political stunt to mislead the world opinion, which actually makes it worse. Priestley predicts that the situation is becoming so bad that soon international relations are going to be so soured and unpleasant that diplomats will need to move around in tanks for their own safety and defense. All embassies will need to be guarded like fortresses, and students will probably need to be given guns and weapons on being enrolled as students in universities and colleges. There is something else that he is shocked by: the pleasure that the student world takes in destruction, the joy in their faces when they mar, break, or burn cars and make bonfires of books. Instead of learning to create, they are learning to destroy. They are more trained in hooliganism or rowdy, violent behavior, but remain untrained and unskilled in arts, languages, sciences. Priestley wonders what teachers of language or chemists or lawyers they will make, or what doctors they make, but has no doubts about their employability as demolition squads or groups which are called upon to destroy something. Unfortunately, this behavior is giving a signal to the world, youth all over. It is setting a trend where politics or world reform or world welfare or world concerns are not the priority of these misguided youth. And it is a sad fact because the rich countries, the affluent countries, which provide for their education, are actually teaching them more about vandalism, hooliganism, rather than about capitalism or socialism. The privileged, well fed youngsters are the ones who are causing more destruction and displaying shocking disregard for other people's possessions. They seem to have arrived from another planet with the sole purpose of derailing other people's trains. The writer remembers his own young days. He was a Yorkshire guy where boys came to elementary school in clogs, which are shoes made of wood, mainly worn by the children of the working class, which means that the writer lived in circumstances far less privileged than the students that he's talking about. There were fights then also where plates, cups, saucers were smashed. They played football on unprepared, rough grounds, which he called the cinder tips, where coal or wood, which probably had been burnt and glowing embers of the fire still remained. This is just to tell you how difficult his own youth had been as compared to these marauding youngsters or student mobs of the present time. Destruction was not amusement then. People did not derive an abnormal pleasure out of hurting, killing, or harming. This cold disregard comes out of a psychological malady or mental illness. Why on earth should there be such hatred of life? It is beyond the writer to understand this temperament of the students. He is frightened by the thought of how worse it could become tomorrow. He describes New York City with the heavy ball and chain used for destruction of buildings. He again mentions New York at the end of the essay when he describes the continuous puffs of steam in New York streets, symbolic of development and growth, but it leaves one with an uncomfortable, uneasy feeling as to where growth and development is taking humanity, because the youth are representative of evolution. And though there are always justifications or explanations or reasons given for this youth, like the creation of the hydrogen bomb, which offers immense destructive possibilities, broken homes, war, conflict of religion, etc., The writer continues to be puzzled as to some other reason which he calls the X factor. And while he remains in confusion, he wonders if he might see someday students making something instead of breaking something, or even studying for that matter. Now, this essay, even though it has been written years and years and years back, holds its relevance even in the present times, because we continuously hear about student disturbances, student eruptions taking place all over the world. When we talk about students, we expect students to adhere, to cohere, to be part of a system, not to go against the establishment just for the sake of going against the establishment. You are all youngsters in the first year. We expect better understanding of what the writer is trying to say. Thank you. Listen to this a few more times. If this is new to you, I expect you to come back to me with questions, queries, whatever you need to ask. Thank you so much.